Husayn ibn Ali, the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, was slain in the Battle of Karbala, only 48 years after the Prophet Muhammad passed away. What is the significance of this battle in Islamic history, and why did it occur? A power vacuum resulted from the assassination of the fourth caliph, ʿAlī, in 661, and Muawiyah took over as caliph in spite of objections from some Ummah members who preferred Hassan, son of Mawla Ali, who was the Prophet's grandson, to head the Ummah. To avoid further bloodshed after years of conflict, Imam Hassan signed a peace treaty with Muawiyah. This treaty stipulated that Muawiyah would not appoint a successor after him. In the year 670, Imam Hassan was assassinated. His brother Imam Husayn assumed responsibility for his duties. The contract was broken when Muawiyah established the Umayyad dynasty in 680 by appointing his son Yazīd as his heir. Yazīd used violence, bribery, and corruption to consolidate his control. Yazīd demanded Husayn's fealty in order to legitimize his reign. Imam Husayn declined since Yazīd was well known for being cruel and overtly corrupt. Imam Husayn had to leave Medina because he was in danger of being imprisoned and killed. From Kufa, Iraq, he had received thousands of letters promising help for a rebellion against Yazīd. "I am ready to fight for the sole goal of seeking reform of the Ummah of my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah," he declared, in reference to his reluctance to swear allegiance. "I wish to prohibit evil and encourage good." Imam Husayn first traveled to Makkah for the Hajj, but he later withdrew to protect the sacred city's sanctity and avoid disturbance. Imam Husayn left for Kufa with his companions and family. Yazīd dispatched a governor to Kufa to put an end to discontent in reaction to the Kufans' threat of revolt. As a result, many of Kufans abandoned their cause under fear of violence. Imam Husayn's caravan was stopped as it approached Kufa by a battalion of Yazid's army under the command of a man by the name of Hur al-Riyahi. Omar ibn Sa'ad led a larger army of thousands of soldiers that joined him and besieged Imam Husayn's camp at what is now known as Karbala, Iraq. Imam Husayn and his family were denied access to water by the army, which left the men, women, and kids to endure days of dehydration in the scorching desert heat of Iraq. Imam Husayn was threatened with death as the army sought allegiance from him. Despite all the odds, Imam Husayn refused to back down. Imam Husayn gave his friends permission to depart the night before the battle, but in the event of an inevitable loss, they agreed to stand beside him in the face of the defeat. On the 10th of Muharram, also referred to as the Day of Ashura, Imam Husayn made a stirring speech the next morning, reminding the opposition that he was still the Prophet's grandson and that he was standing up for justice. Hur left Ibn Sa'ad's army and joined Imam Husayn's after being moved by Imam Husayn's speech. The fight began, with an army estimated by numerous historians to be 30,000 strong opposing Imam Husayn and his 72-odd companions. Imam Husayn's companions perished on the battlefield, fighting group by group. After a while, Imam Husayn was left with only a few relatives. They also perished, one by one. With no one to support him, Imam Husayn begged the enemy forces for water for his infant, who was just 6 months old. In response, the enemy shot the youngster fatally, killing Imam Husayn's child in his arms. After burying the child, Imam Husayn bade his camp's women and kids farewell. With great ferocity, he charged into the battlefield, where he valiantly fought until falling off his horse and being surrounded by opposing soldiers. The Prophet's grandson was viciously assailed from all sides and executed by beheading. The enemy soldiers stormed and pillaged Imam Husayn's family's tent as well as the location of the dead bodies. The women, who included the Prophet's granddaughters, were inside the tents when they were set on fire. Yazid's forces captured the family and later paraded them to Syria's Damascus. As word of the Karbala tragedy traveled throughout the Muslim world, it rocked the Ummah and spurred uprisings. The history of Islam was irrevocably altered by the Battle of Karbala. Millions of Muslims worldwide, Sunni and Shia alike, observe Ashura to commemorate the valiant deeds of Imam Husayn, the grandson of the Prophet. After the Battle of Karbala in 680 CE, Yazīd ibn Muawiyah faced significant backlash and condemnation for his role in the tragic event. The battle, which resulted in the martyrdom of Husayn ibn Ali, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, and his companions, left a lasting stain on Yazid's reputation, especially among Muslims who viewed Hussein's stance as a fight against tyranny and injustice. Yazid continued to rule as the Umayyad caliph until his death in 683 CE, just 3 years after the Battle of Karbala. His reign was marked by unrest and dissatisfaction among many groups within the Muslim community. Yazid's reputation was heavily tarnished due to his perceived responsibility for the massacre at Karbala. After Karbala, Yazid faced several rebellions, most notably in the Hijaz region, which includes Mecca and Medina. One of the most significant uprisings was the revolt of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. In response, Yazid sent an army to suppress the rebellion, which led to further bloodshed and the infamous siege of Mecca. In response to the rebellion, Yazid dispatched an army under the command of Muslim ibn Uqba to suppress the uprisings in the Hijaz region, which includes both Medina and Mecca. After putting down resistance in Medina, the Battle of al-Hara in 683 CE, the Umayyad forces turned their attention to Mecca. The Yazid's army laid siege to Mecca to capture Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr. During the siege, the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam, was damaged. Reports suggest that the Umayyad forces used catapults and a fire broke out, which led to the Kaaba's partial destruction. This act further fueled the anger and opposition against Yazid and his regime. The attack on Mecca and the desecration of the Kaaba were seen as acts of sacrilege by many Muslims, further damaging the reputation of Yazid and the Umayyad dynasty. The event intensified opposition to the Umayyads, especially among those who viewed the sanctity of Mecca as paramount. Yazid died in 683 CE, just 3 years after the Karbala event. Some accounts suggest he died of illness, while others imply he may have succumbed to the stresses and pressures of ruling amid widespread hatred, rebellion, and unrest. In the years following his death, Yazid's actions and decisions, particularly concerning Karbala, became central to discussions about justice, leadership, and morality in Islamic governance. The memory of his role in the Battle of Karbala continues to be a deeply emotional and divisive issue, where he is often seen as the epitome of injustice and tyranny. Imam Hussein's stance at Karbala became a powerful symbol of resistance against oppression and injustice. His willingness to sacrifice his life for his principles inspired many movements throughout Islamic history and continues to be a source of inspiration for those advocating for justice and standing against tyranny. The memory of Karbala and the commemoration of Muharram have continued relevance in contemporary times, often being invoked as symbols of resistance against oppression, injustice, and tyranny. The themes of Karbala resonate with struggles for social justice and human rights worldwide.